Hey y'all, welcome to That Tennessee Feeling. I hope y'all been doing good. It's spooky season. I'm here for it. It's fall. It's getting cold. The leaves are turning. I want to say it's probably one of my favorite times to be in Tennessee, especially when you get the different colors on the trees. I don't know why. I always like the red leaves. They were the prettiest to me. I don't know why. But yeah, it's spooky season. I'm here for it. Tennessee Vols are being the Tennessee Vols. Alabama's playing today. Go Vols. Yeah. Thanks for everybody who's listening to the podcast. I know it's monthly episodes right now. Hopefully that'll change in the future. I appreciate all the love on the social media pages. You guys are amazing. I love the interactions. And I'm glad that you guys really enjoyed the Bell Witch episode. The Bell Witch is, of course, one of Tennessee's most famous spooky places. And that's what actually we're going to talk about today. No, we're not going to talk about the Bell Witch again, but we are going to talk about the spooky places in Tennessee. And yes, there are quite a few of them. And yeah, I'm going to tell you one of mine. So the first place I'm going to actually talk about is in Sevierville. It's the Wheatlands Plantation. And you can actually go and tour this historic home. They also have ghost tours. It's like $15 to $20 a person, depending on which tour you take. But yeah, this is definitely one of those places that if you're into the spooky and you're into Tennessee history and Civil War history and Revolutionary War history, you're probably going to want to check out Wheatlands Plantation. So what makes this plantation so haunted? Well, there's a really good reason why it's haunted. More than 70 people have been murdered in this house from battles during the Revolutionary War and the Civil War. So this is an old house. It's estimated that 28 Cherokees were killed at the Battle of Boyd's Creek, which actually runs adjacent to the property during the Revolutionary War. And there are approximately 69 enslaved people and 2 Revolutionary War soldiers buried on this property. Y'all, that's a lot of death associated with one house and the land around it. So it's no wonder this place is creepy and haunted. But what really makes it haunted? Well, if you're walking through the house, you might spot bloodstains in the parlor. Why? Well, there's a good story behind it. After the owner of the estate left Wheatland Plantation to his grandson, the dad of the grandson, so the father, confronted him and in turn was actually murdered by his son with an iron poker. That's right, he murdered him. He wasn't going to let his daddy have his home. I don't blame him. And although the floors have been cleaned numerous times, the bloodstains just kind of keep coming back. So if you're looking for spooky in Sevierville, definitely want to check out this house. Who knows what you'll see. Another place in Tennessee that's haunted, and this one probably you've heard about, is the Tennessee State Prison in Nashville, Tennessee. The prison is not open for tours. It was, and of course it was kind of going downhill because they've just kind of let it sit. But after that tornado hit in March of 2020, it actually took out parts of the prison. So the Tennessee State Prison is no longer open for tours. You cannot go in. You can't really even go near it. That's because, Mother Nature decided to reclaim part of the land. But what makes this place haunted? Well, if you've ever driven by this place, you already know it just looks haunted. It looks like a castle. And in fact, you've probably seen it. It's had numerous movies filmed since it closed. So the state prison actually closed in 1992. And you're going to recognize it if you've ever seen The Green Mile, Ernest Goes to Jail, or The Last Castle. But the Tennessee State Prison is actually more known for its prison breaks, its riots, its fires, and the inhumane conditions that it was while it was open. And I actually have stories about this prison. My grandma worked in this prison as a nurse, and she was there for the pork chop riot. That's right. Go Tennessee. We had a pork chop riot in our prison. She said it was scary. She used to tell stories about it. And, yeah. But this is a massive jail. And a lot of bad things happen. So no wonder it's haunted. This jail was actually built in 1889. I'm calling it a jail. It's a prison. So it was built in 1889. Old building. And it had 800 cells that just became overcrowded. But, of course, it's got a huge history. Capital Punishment Facility housed the assassin of Martin Luther King Jr. Johnny Cash played in this prison in 1968 for the inmates, and more than 100 prisoners were executed using Old Sparky, the state electric chair. Fun fact, Most states name their electric chair Old Sparky. Just wanted to shout out that one. So, what can you see if you were allowed in this prison? Well, you can see a lot, because there's not just one ghost that haunts this prison. Many, many, many were taken by Old Sparky. Many were taken by fellow inmates, and they all seem to roam the halls. You can hear voices, sounds, footsteps, doors slamming, someone coming up behind you, cold spots, creepy feelings, like you name it. This place is it. This is like your paranormal activity central in Nashville. And I'm telling you guys, if you've never seen what it looks like, just Google a picture of it, and you're going to be like, yep, definitely haunted. Like, it just has that look. So if you're in Nashville, just drive by. You can see it off of, I want to say part of Brawley. Yeah. I want to say. It's been a while since I've driven over that way. But yeah, you can still see it. Full display in its deteriorating state. Definitely a creepy vibe. But not all the ghosts in Tennessee like to stick to East Tennessee and to Middle Tennessee. You can also find them in Millington, Tennessee. The Meeman-Shelby Forest. Now, the Meeman-Shelby Forest is actually a state park. It's one of the Tennessee state parks. It has over 13,000 acres, and it actually sits along the Mississippi River. So you can do anything from hiking to camping, recreation. The park is really for an outdoor enthusiast. You can see the beauty and nature of the area. And normally forests are peaceful and inviting and great until the sun goes down. And yes, this is part of Appalachia. Remember those Appalachian superstitions I told y'all in another episode? This is it. Do not look for things in the trees. If someone calls your name, no, they didn't. If you hear somebody yelling, no, you didn't. And this is no exception. After dark, in addition to the 200 species of songbirds, waterfowl, shorebirds, and birds of prey, you can see the pigman. That's right, the pigman. The pigman, who has a pig-like face and is said to haunt the park's wooded areas and roams the land. Now, nobody's actually gotten close enough to the pigman to look him in the eye, but campers have seen him roaming around late at night, dashing through the woods, not with a one-horse open sleigh. But yeah, this is another one of those straight out of Appalachia superstitions. Things roaming the forest, things mimicking people's voices. You know, so it's not surprised that one of the cryptids, named the Pigman, live in this state park. Like I said, Tennessee has a lot of haunted history. And I'll get into a lot of the history, especially when I get into the Civil War in Tennessee, because let's face it, Tennessee had a lot of Civil War battles. You know, it was the South. And so it's not surprised that a lot of Tennessee is haunted based just on that alone. Shiloh National Park in Shiloh, Tennessee, that's another one. But Shiloh is insane. More than 23,000 casualties occurred in the Battle of Shiloh on April 6th and 7th of 1862. 23,000. That is more than some people are living in the cities in Tennessee, y'all. There are small towns that have less people than these casualties. 23,000. And at this time, that was more than combined casualties of the previous American wars. Like, combined. Like, the Revolutionary War, the War of 1812, like, all those wars, they still didn't have 23,000 casualties. But the Battle of Shiloh did in 2 days. 40,000 Confederate troops surprised Federal troops near Pittsburgh Landing on the Tennessee River. Union soldiers were able to hold their line under the command of Ulysses S. Grant, and they were reinforced the next day. That gave them the advantage over the weakened Confederates. After losing their commander, General Albert Sidney Johnston, on April 6th, the Confederates' new commander, P.G.T. Beauregard, was forced to retreat, ending the battle in a Union victory. But before that retreat, 23,000 casualties. So what are you going to see in Shiloh? You're going to see a lot. You're going to see kind of everything. There are accounts of people seeing the pond colored in blood any time of the year, like you just be walking by and it's red. The same pond where injured soldiers from both sides came to bathe wounds during this awful battle, and that's why you will always see it turn red. And it wasn't just soldiers, it was also horses. Of course, there's no solid evidence that that pond is the same pond as it was in 1862, but it doesn't matter. That ground ran red with blood. So it's no wonder it's tainted. People have run into soldiers at night. They have seen soldiers walking in formation. They've seen the wounded laying in the fields. They have heard the gunshots and the cannons from people still fighting this war. Shiloh is an amazing historical national park, and it definitely tells the history of the Civil War. But I guarantee you, in that little group you're listening to it in, or you're exploring it, you're probably not alone. There's probably a couple extra hangers-on. You just may not see them all the time. I will go ahead and say it, the Bell Witch Cave, because we talked about it in my last episode, but it'd be remiss to not go ahead and talk about it again. The Bell Witch Cave in Adams, Tennessee. That is probably one of the most well-known haunted places in Tennessee. Why? Well, a land dispute, honestly. Kate Batts, a neighbor of John Bell. John Bell was the man who was haunted, him and his family. She actually promised to haunt John Bell and his decedents, and you better believe she did. Betsy, John's daughter, was tormented the most by the Bell Witch during her childhood. But the witch could be seen and felt by all. Even Andrew Jackson was quoted as saying, "I'd rather face an entire British army than spend another night with that witch." So this was a thing, and this wasn't just one family having eaten bad bread and making stuff up. No, this was real, solid evidence that many people encountered. You know, it's even believed that after John died of a strange illness, that the witch threatened Betsy against marrying the boy she was seeing, the neighbor boy that she loved. The witch eventually retired to the Bell Witch Cave, and perhaps the place that allowed her to enter the world. We don't know. I mean, it's a creepy cave. I talk about it in the episode. That is probably one of the creepiest caves I've ever seen. Now, did I feel anything when I went? No. But I could definitely see how it would give you a weird effect. It is limestone. Limestone is known to hold on to energy. So it doesn't surprise me that a lot of Tennessee is haunted, and it sure doesn't surprise me that that cave could be haunted. Now, there's a lot of stories about the Bell Witch haunting. I mean, these stories have come since it started. One such story is actually in the script for the Bell Witch haunting. It says, "I was walking near the opening of the cave on the Bell property with another writer. We were walking beside one another with no one else around. Everything was quiet when we heard a woman angrily whisper over our shoulders, 'What are you doing here?' They turned around and no one was there." So, do I think that the Bell Witch was a real spirit? Yes, absolutely, 1,000%. Do I think that she probably still haunts that property? Yeah, especially if it really is Kate Batts who was mad. You know, anger is a very powerful emotion, even after death. So, it wouldn't surprise me that someone is still there. It wouldn't surprise me that someone still doesn't want people on their land. But definitely go check out the Bell Witch. It's a really cool piece of history. It's a really interesting part of Tennessee history. Like I said, check out the caves, see what you think about it. I went. They are creepy. They are not creepy to make me get a haunted vibe. But that is just me. So, I had to hit the most, known in Tennessee. Another place, so you don't want to go check out a witch, is how about check out the Carnton Plantation in Franklin. You can still go visit this place. You can they are open for tours. And again, this is another one of those Civil War haunts. One of the bloodiest battles in the Civil War took place less than a mile from the Carnton Mansion in Franklin on November 30th of 1864. So even towards the end of the war, people are still heavily fighting and dying in these battles. The Confederate Army of Tennessee attacked the Federal Army's quickly fortified position, and the Battle of Franklin ensued. Again, another war battle with enormous casualties. The frontal assault was larger than Pickett's charge at Gettysburg, but it lasted only one evening, and those hours resulted in over 8,500 casualties. So in 2 wars, we've already talked about over 30,000 casualties. Now, in those 8,500 casualties at the Battle of Franklin, 6,000 of those were Confederates. This battle was the single greatest loss of Confederate generals compared to any other battle in the Civil War. And of course, Carnton's proximity to the actual battle made it the perfect spot to serve as a field hospital during this battle. The bodies of 4 generals, Patrick Cleburne, John Adams, Otho F. Strahl, and Hiram B. Granberry, were all laid out on the back porch. And you can still see the bloodstains of the men today in this house, on these porches. Now, I think that there's a lot of reasons that this could be haunted, but especially if this served as a place, as a hospital. And we all know that medicine back then wasn't great. And it's not surprising that people died after the amputations. And the Civil War had some really, really bad ammo. And I don't mean bad in the sense of like it was crappy. I mean like mini balls would just tear through someone's leg and shatter a femur. And it's gone. Like just never going to use it again, gone. And that's really where most of the amputations came from, were these musket balls and mini balls. Because you're talking steel balls going into and through someone. Not only is it going to hurt, but it's going to render it useless. So when can you see most of these spirits? Well, the spirits of the fallen are especially active in the autumn months. So now, and around the date of the battle, and they usually see them at dusk. One general can't resist because he knew that his men wouldn't hold up too well and is still fretting about the coming battle that he knew would be a bloodbath. I apologize, guys. My cat can't sit still for 5 minutes to save his life. But yeah, so you can still see one of the generals walking about, and this spirit general, Pat Cleburne, is seen as a man with a mustache, a short beard, piercing eyes, pacing the back porch, the same back porch that he was laid on. He'll also walk around the outside perimeter of the mansion, and on occasion talks to lone persons. So if you're out there walking around by yourself, you might chance encounter General Cleburne. But it's not surprising why this is a super haunted place. Now, of course, there are other kinds of places that are haunted in Tennessee. Cemeteries are another common place where you can see ghostly sightings and other paranormal activities. And the Greenwood Cemetery in Chattanooga is no different. Holy crap, I have family buried there. Sorry, I just realized what cemetery this was. The ghost that is most often seen in the Greenwood Cemetery was once a wealthy woman who lived across the lake with her husband. After becoming wheelchair-bound because of health issues, her husband decided to cheat on her and eventually kill her, because you could just do that back then. People say you can still see the tracks from a wheelchair on cemetery grounds, and you can say that you can see the woman in sort of a green mist. Sometimes she's seen wandering near the lake. Sometimes she's seen just kind of floating about. Either way, that's a woman scorned. Another place that can haunt, tunnels. Right? Tunnels. Cinnabar Tunnel in Kingsport is another haunted place in Tennessee. The people in Kingsport have heard the stories about one of the most haunted tunnels in East Tennessee. And it has been around since the 1920s. It's the site of mass murders. And it's limestone. All that combined makes it a very good reason to be haunted. Paranormal investigators have traveled into the tunnel in hopes of acquiring EVPs, or electronic voice phenomenons. They also maybe hope to capture a ghost hanging around the tunnel with their cameras. But what do most people report? They'll hear a baby crying in the tunnel. They'll see orbs floating around it. They'll feel cold spots. They'll see mist. Many visitors also say they've heard what to be assumed the murdered family of Mr. Cinnabar, the namesake of the tunnel. So if you're in Kingsport or near Kingsport, you want to get something for this spooky season, go to Cinnabar Tunnel. See if you see any orbs or hear a crying baby. And while you're in that area, you could also go to Gwendolyn's house in Elizabethton. Elizabethton is a really cool town in East Tennessee. And this home has been around since the early 1900s. And one of the overall opinions of the property is that it is actually incredibly scary to visit. People get really bad vibes when visiting this home. And for good reason. One of the main things that people say about this property is that they see a ghost of a black dog running in the house, in both the basement and in the hallways. You can also see a woman in white who likes to stand in or near the windows of the house and look out. A lot of people also say that when people enter the home, a ghost or entity likes to scream at them, like an angry scream. And it gives off just this incredibly angry energy just all over the house. They don't know who the entity is. They don't know why it's aggressive. but a lot of people apparently have encountered it. So, still looking for some place to visit? Might want to check that one out. You can also check out Bethesda Church and Cemetery in Morristown. In Morristown, the Bethesda Church and Cemetery is said to have an incredible amount of wandering spirits. So, a lot of times when you see cemeteries, they look peaceful and they look almost welcoming, almost inviting, like a good place for you to go and visit your loved one. But this cemetery isn't quite that. The ghosts of the people that have seen roaming around this are mainly Confederate soldiers. Witnesses passing by the cemetery and church saw what appeared to be Confederate soldiers wandering about carrying an old-fashioned lantern, possibly still looking for the rest of his troops. A lot of witnesses have stated that they've seen 2 Confederate soldiers standing outside the church talking, just carrying on a normal conversation. They might have been doing that when they got killed. Who knows? But once upon seeing that someone has spotted them, they will walk around the corner of a church and disappear. There's also a ghost of a woman who appears to be crying on one side by the far side of the cemetery. And if you're there at night, there's a really good chance you're probably going to hear her. If cemeteries aren't your thing, what about a theater? I hate to say this, but I swear most theaters are haunted. Like, every time you hear, like, a haunted list, there's always going to be, like, one theater. And it's probably because a lot of people put their heart and energy and soul into those performances, and they just don't want to leave. They feel comfortable there. You can always check out the Bijou Theater in Knoxville. This theater is often on the haunted places to visit in Knoxville. And I'm not going to lie, the Bijou Theater is amazing. It's really beautiful. They've done it well. It's in remarkable condition. It's in a really good spot for downtown Knoxville. And fun fact, the Bijou Theater used to be the place where they played the X-rated movies in Knoxville. Thank you, John, for that tidbit of information. But if you're visiting the Bijou, because they still do host events, you might also encounter a ghost or two. The ghost that has been identified, and I'm not making this up, is Colonel William Sanders. No, not the KFC guy. Just different namesake. He apparently passed away in the bridal suite of the theater. You also may see a ghost that tends to be a soldier who passed away in the theater when it served as a hospital. The halls are also known to be home to some rather angry ghosts. A lot of places in Tennessee once served as a hospital thanks to the Civil War, and the Bijou Theater is no exception. So it's not surprising that you might encounter a soldier in most places in Tennessee that are haunted. Maybe not a theater you don't want to go to. Check out the Rothwood Mansion in Kingsport. The Rothwood Mansion is definitely one of the most haunted houses in East Tennessee. A lot of people like to go here. A lot of ghost hunters like to go to this place. This place is almost 200 years old and has just such a sad history. And of course, as we know, anger and sadness often somehow equate into hauntings. The home was built by Reverend Frederick Ross, and it was a beautiful home. It was an absolutely beautiful home, but it would prove to be a location of tragedy and sadness, especially for his daughter, Rowena. Rowena lost her first love on the day of her wedding prior to the ceremony. And she went on to lose another love and eventually even her daughter. Unable to live, Rowena eventually killed herself by drowning in the lake in which her first fiancé perished. After so much tragedy, Rowena's spirit is said to be present at the Rothwood Mansion. She's had so much sadness and anger there, it's not surprised that she is still there. People have seen her wandering around in a long, flowing white dress. Okay, why is it always a white dress? Why can't we have a ghost in a freaking purple dress? I'm just asking, sorry. But Rowena is often seen wearing a long, flowing white dress, walking around the mansion and the grounds and around the lake. People have also heard unnerving laughter after sundown, seen creepy eyes in the window looking back at them, and even witnessed a large black ghost dog roaming the property and howling. It's believed that after the home changed hands, it became the property of a slave owner, and the laughter and unusual activity is from the ghost of some of the former slaves. So that is a very tragic property. It's a very beautiful property. It's a very haunting property, but it's a very, very tragic property. So you don't want to go to that property. Check out the Delta Queen in Chattanooga. The Delta Queen was once an impressive vessel that carried people around the Tennessee waterways. And today, it's actually a hotel docked in Chattanooga. It's docked off the riverbanks. You can actually see it. I want to say you can see it from the riverside where the aquarium is. I know I've seen it. I just can't remember which part of it I saw it at. Either way, it stays docked, and you can come see the impressive Delta Queen. You can stay the night and enjoy a fabulous time. Some of the guests that visit the Delta Queen also get the opportunity to encounter shadows in some of the bedrooms. Possibly former people who enjoyed the is it a boat? Is it a ship? I'm going to call it a boat. Possibly some of the guests that enjoyed the boat before the people who do now. So it's not often to see shadows in some of the bedrooms, to feel someone watching you, cold spots. And some people find their attempts to enjoy the Delta Queen's bar is prevented courtesy of the ghost of Mary B. Green, who is said to still live on the ship to this day. That is where she made her home. Another place you can check out is, 2 hours north in Knoxville. You can go to the Lakeshore Asylum. So in 1886, Tennessee needed a mental institution, so they opened the East Tennessee Hospital for the Insane, years later named the Lakeshore Asylum. And of course, back in the 1800s, people did not understand mental health, and you could be put in an asylum if you had cramps as a woman. So, it just tells you exactly kind of how that went. And this is back when lobotomies were starting to become a thing. People who were mentally handicapped, they didn't understand that. They thought they were insane. They would put them in an asylum. People who were depressed. People who were poor. People you just wanted to get rid of. You could have them committed. So, people that have gone to this asylum to investigate say that there's a lot of activity in the building. They often find themselves hearing screams of former patients echoing through the halls. Strange-looking figures have been spotted roaming the building. Cold spots, eerie noises, slamming of doors, you name it. This is a sad place, and it's not surprising that it's haunted. Now, this is actually kind of one of my favorite places. It's back in Chattanooga. We're just kind of bouncing around. And it's the historic Reed House Hotel. And it is a beautiful place. You can still stay there to this day. The Sheraton Reed House Hotel is one of the most haunted hotels in Tennessee that has verified there are ghosts living in the building. Sorry, my soundbar just turned itself off. Which is kind of scary when you're talking about ghosts and you hear something and you don't know what it is at first. So, yeah. The Sheraton Reed House Hotel is one of the most haunted hotels in Tennessee that has verified ghosts haunting the building. The hotel has served as an elegant place to stay for people since the late 1800s. I mean, this is an old, beautiful hotel. But it's also been home to deaths caused by natural causes, not to mention a couple murders and suicides along the way. The ghost of Annalise Netherly is said to haunt room 311, the location where her husband murdered her upon finding out she was having an affair. Outside of room 311, things get moved around in rooms. People see shadows in the mirrors. People see people standing behind them out of the corner of their eye. And someone even saw someone reclining on a bed just to look back and see that no one was there. Some guests of the hotel and former employees have also stated that there is a ghost of a man and a woman who have been haunting the hotel this day. They might have been doing some prostituting kind of activities and never really wanted to leave the hotel. Some say that the man's ghost hangs around because he was either murdered or committed suicide while on the premises. It's a really cool building. I love the Reed House. If you get the chance to stay in Chattanooga and you want to splurge a little bit, definitely check it out. It's got some amazing old architecture and it's very nice. Let's talk about a place we haven't talked about yet, really, in Tennessee. What about Clarksville? Clarksville's haunted? No exception. The Rest Haven Memorial Gardens in Clarksville is known to be haunted. If there was ever a location that does not live up to its name, it is Rest Haven. It is not a very restful place. It is also another one of the most haunted locations in Tennessee, falling under these cemeteries. Now, near where Rest Haven is, there's a house in which a brutal slave owner used to reside. It is rumored that one of the slaves raped his daughter and got her pregnant. The owner killed the slave in a fit of rage. The slave's ghost is often seen wandering the grounds and Memorial Gardens, searching for his lost child. So maybe he didn't rape the girl, maybe they had fallen in love, but it's a slave owner and we all know what happens. So that's actually a really well-known spotted spirit. I've heard stories about this place before. And it is pretty much like verifiable that you can see this slave roaming the grounds. I have not been to it, but it's definitely a place I want to check out. But it's a very old cemetery. So honestly, who knows what you might see there? You know, it wouldn't surprise me if you saw a couple other things. And while we're on cemeteries, how about the Pegram Family Cemetery in Pegram, Tennessee? So in the 1970s, a group of developers decided to bulldoze an area along the Harpeth River while working on a housing development, which pretty much is kind of what happens to this day. Now, when they were bulldozing, they tragically destroyed the Pegram Family Cemetery. The dirt from the land was sold to fill dirt across 2 counties. Now, 5 years later, the waters rose and all the homes built on the land that was once the cemetery flooded. Okay, it flooded. Maybe it's cursed. Well, during that flood, some of the coffins that had not been relocated just kind of popped up and floated to the surface. One in particular belonged to the town's very first postmistress. That's right, a woman, Carrie Pegram Heath. Unfortunately, since that, the town has had nothing but bad luck, and it definitely floods with regularity. Again, seeming cursed, and it has had no end of financial hardships. There is an overall feeling of unrest and malice lingering in this area, and some of the homeowners have claimed to see tombstones appearing and disappearing from their own gardens. I can definitely say that Pegram is one of those towns that you don't hear much about it unless it's not the good stuff. So that's why you let the dead rest in peace. Now, we haven't really talked much about Memphis, but Memphis is definitely haunted on its own too. The Orpheum Theater in Memphis is said to be haunted by the spirit of a little girl named Mary who died by an accident on a nearby street. She's been hanging around the theater for well over 60 years now, and even though the original building burned down in 1923 and reopened in 1928, she's still here, and she even has a favorite seat. Her favorite seat is C5, and she is sometimes heard giggling and running up and down the aisles. I'm telling y'all, all theaters are haunted. I don't care. I believe it. Hales Bar, Marina, and Dam in Guild, Tennessee is another haunted place. I think this one's unusual because it is a marina and a dam. You don't usually hear about like haunted marinas. It was built along the Tennessee River in 1905, and it was going to tame a natural whirlpool in the river. The local Native American tribes were not happy with its construction and were said to have put a curse on the dam. So this is actually why people believe this is so haunted. Visitors, staff, and paranormal groups have reported a variety of activity that includes hearing Native American war cries, chanting, dark figures, and even the apparition of a little girl in a pink dress who is said to be drowned here, still roaming this dam and marina. It is said that her remains are actually trapped in the dam, which explains why she's unable to rest. The Native Americans are still upset many years later over the dam being built, and that's why you often hear them chanting and roaming the area. I mean, that makes sense. I can see being upset about somebody who built on my land. All right. If you've watched anything involving like Ghost Adventures or Haunted Places or Destination Fear, you've probably heard of Brushy Mountain State Penitentiary in Petros, Tennessee. Brushy Mountain State Penitentiary is literally a hellhole. Like, it is a place of nightmares. And I'm probably going to do an entire episode just on it because this is a former maximum security prison that dates back to 1896. And it's horrible. It opened in the aftermath of the Cold Creek War. Bleak conditions, disease, brutal mining work made it a deadly and dangerous place for inmates. That's right. They used to make inmates mine and work in the surrounding area of this penitentiary just to be able to generate money for the penitentiary. The castle-like prison structure that visitors know today was built in 1931 to combat overcrowding, so it's been added on to. And the moniker, the End of Line, for its history of housing probably some of the most heinous criminals, most notably Martin Luther King Jr.'s assassin, James Earl Ray. He actually, I want to say, escaped from this prison, and they caught him with the use of the dogs. Yeah, I think it was him. It was him or somebody that was well known. Escaped, which is insane because Brushy Mountain has no real fence around it. It doesn't. It is literally in a cove. We'll call it a cove, and it's surrounded on three sides by just straight up cliff mountains. Just the mountains just go straight up, very steep angles, very hard to get around and get through and get up. And the front is open, of course, for an entrance, but it was a very, very horrible place. Now, the prison was finally shuttered in 2009, and it was reopened in 2018 as a historical site. It actually has a distillery, and it's an event venue. I have not been back since it's reopened. I would love to go. Ex-prison guards and nonviolent inmates actually lead the tours during the day that used to stay there, and so I can only imagine some of the stories that they could tell. Now, the thrill seekers can sign up for overnight paranormal tours. They do have that, and the websites claim that visitors have reported being touched, shoved, growled at, weird sounds, screams, and many different things being heard within the walls of that prison. Now, that was a very dangerous prison. Many people were killed there. It does not surprise me of any report that comes out of that prison alone. Oh gosh, it's one of those places like you need to go just for the history, but you stay for the paranormal. It's really strange. The Greenbrier Restaurant in Gatlinburg, Tennessee is also haunted. Yes, Gatlinburg, our favorite mountain retreat, is got a history. Legend has it this former lodge had guests check in the 1930s, and some never checked out. The most famous guest who stayed around is a scorned bride named Lydia. Lydia was going to get married there, and on the day of her wedding, she went to the altar, and she was stood up. And of course, she was heartbroken. She went back to the lodge. She took a rope upstairs to the second floor, threw it over a beam, and hung herself. You can actually still see the rope burns in the middle of the beam as it hangs above the restaurant bar. Customers will often say they've seen a woman on the stairs and look back and there's no one there. And, you know, it's a really cool place. I mean, this steakhouse was also located near one of Gatlinburg's first pools. So like an actual swimming pool. And even though that pool's been filled in, some claim the presence of a little boy who drowned in it can also be found at the Greenbrier. Really nice restaurant, but kind of got that creepy vibe going. So another thing that's haunted is a lot of times bridges. You'll hear a lot of bridges that are haunted due to drownings, accidents, sometimes murders, you name it. But Drummond Bridge in Briceville, Tennessee is no exception. Another local legend that again has its origin in the Coal Creek War is a bridge in Anderson County. Tensions were high as miners rebelled against the mine owners who wanted to cut costs by using state prisoners for cheap labor rather than company-employed private miners. Remember how I said the people at Brushy were sent into the mines? This is that war. Barry Thacker of the Coal Creek Watershed said that Richard Dick Drummond was one of the miners fighting at the time. Legend has it, though, he was lynched at this bridge after a dispute. Everything was fine until Dick Drummond walked in the door. There was a fight that night over a girl. And later that night, he was dead. He was dragged from the boarding house he was staying in and hanged off the now infamous bridge. There are two beliefs as to why he might be hunting the bridge where he was killed. One is that he wants revenge against the soldier that killed him. The other is that he's still looking for his girlfriend. I don't know. Either way, who knows what you'll see if you cross the Drummond Bridge. Another place in Anderson County is the Daughtery, it's got to be Daughtery Furniture Building in Clinton, Tennessee. Household goods store served Anderson County and the surrounding areas for decades after it was built in 1942. And the building also housed some of the store workers in the upper level. The store closed in 1985 after store owner J.R. Daughtery died in his apartment on the site. It is a National Register of Historic Places as of 2010. Now, Cadence Craft and Trade now occupy the building and has experienced some strange happenings in the building. People have heard somebody running up the stairs behind them, so you move to the side to let them pass, and there's no one there. A lot of people believe that Daughtery is the one that is haunting the building. His body might have been removed, but he has stuck around. And the activity comes in waves. when they started working on the building, they experienced a lot of things. Furniture moved on its own, footsteps were everywhere, weird noises, but of course, no one was in the building. And maybe Daugherty didn't leave. Maybe that was his love and he wanted to stick around. Who knows? If you find yourself in Knoxville and you're looking for an interesting place, go to Baker Peters' house. It houses Finn's Restaurant and Tavern in West Knoxville, and it has a very, very spooky history. This house was actually conducted in 1830 and owned by Dr. James Harvey Baker, who was shot and killed inside his home during a raid by Union troops in 1863. And it is haunted. Very, very haunted. Finn's Tavern will actually come out and tell you this building is haunted. They say that up to 15 spirits roam this southern antebellum home. You'll feel cold spots that start at your feet and go all the way up, and then just goes away like someone walked through you. You can also hear footsteps, you can hear voices, and you'll just feel weird spots. Like you ever just walk around and feel something angry? That's this place. They say that most of the spirits are good, but, there's always one bad one in the bunch. I think that a lot of Tennessee holds a lot of history, especially with all the good and the bad that's happened there. Another place that surprised me, though, that was haunted was Andrew Jackson's home in Nashville, the Hermitage. The mansion is listed on the National Register of Historic Places, and it is considered the most intact and authentic of the early presidential homes. His funeral memorial is also on the grounds. It is notoriously haunted as well. There's stories of body snatching from the graves on the property. Of course, slavery, cruelty, and of course, Andrew Jackson's even linked to the Bell Witch, who could have followed him back. They do offer ghost tours through the Hermitage, so you should definitely check it out. If you're just looking for a piece of history, definitely want to check that one out too. The Thomas House Hotel in Red Boiling Springs is another notoriously haunted place in Tennessee. It's actually been on the show Paranormal State and on Ghost Hunters. It was also listed by CNN as the second most haunted location in the United States, which amazes me because of places like Charleston, Savannah, and St. Augustine. But this place is pretty haunted. It's got an enormous amount of weird deaths. It also was home to a cult. And it sits on an ancient Native American trail. The house was built as a larger resort project in Red Boiling Springs in the 1890s. And over the years, it's had 3 fires, a suspected murderer, and a lot of bad things happen. You can still stay there, but you won't be alone. Guests report moving beds, dark figures in the closet, disembodied voices, a general overall discomfort throughout the hotel. Which tells me everything I want to know, and that's nope, I'm not going there. Would you be surprised to know that Loretta Lynn's ranch, Hurricane Mills, is also haunted? Legendary country singer Loretta Lynn started life as an impoverished coal miner's daughter and finished it as the owner of a multi-acre mansion in Tennessee. Her home was originally built by James Anderson and was known as Hurricane Mills. It is the site of a Civil War battle, and over a dozen soldiers are thought to still be buried on the site. People report seeing soldiers wandering the halls of the museums, wandering the grounds, and a seance even once revealed the spirit of James Anderson still inhabits the home. Again, even the people on Ghost Adventures came and checked out Hurricane Mills. I don't know how you feel about Ghost Adventurers, take it with a grain of salt, but it kind of says a lot if they're going to be the ones to come out and say, hey, maybe there is something going on here. I don't know. Tennessee is full of haunted places. I'm just going to talk about a couple more. Chattanooga Choo Choo. This hotel that used to be a terminal station is actually listed on their National Register of Historic Places. It's a super popular spot if you're being a tourist in Chattanooga. It's a super fun hotel. You can sleep in the train cars. But you're probably not in a private suite as much as you think. Hotel guests report seeing a porter still happily carrying bags up the stairs, Civil War soldiers roaming the grounds, and a mother looking for her lost child. Now, of course, the hotel is a massive complex these days. It's got bars, music venues, restaurants, gardens, a distillery. It's actually a really cool place to go and a really cool place to stay. But some of those people you may pass in the area may not be as real as you are. Roaring Fork Motor Nature Trail in Gatlinburg. Roaring Fork Motor Nature Trail is about a 6-mile scenic loop that goes through the Great Smoky Mountains. It's gorgeous, especially this time of year with fall coming. And it's old growth. It's got a roaring creek with numerous waterfalls, and when you drive by this spectacular trail, just be leery of hitchhikers. You know what they say. Don't always pick up hitchhikers. This is that. The trail is said to be haunted by a little girl or possibly a young woman, depending on who you're talking to. Lucy. Lucy lived in a cabin nearby in the early 1900s, and when her home burned to the ground, she was killed in the blaze. Lucy still roams the area. Actually, years later, a man named Forrest saw Lucy walking the road barefoot, and he gave her a ride on his horseback to her home. Her beauty and kindness were said to have captivated him, and he returned to the home to see her afterwards, and he was told by her parents that she had died years before. So, yeah, Lucy's still out there. Many drivers have reported seeing a girl, always looking for a ride home. She seems to be friendly. They give her a ride, and she just disappears. You know what they say, beware of hitchhiking ghosts. The last one I'm going to talk to you about before I tell you my experiences in Elkmont. I've talked about Elkmont. I did an entire whole podcast episode on Elkmont. Elkmont is a ghost town. The Appalachian Clubhouse was originally a 20th century hangout for wealthy hunters built by the Little River Lumber Company in Elkmont. Elkmont was nothing more than a lumbering town built on the side of a railroad. The land was eventually bought up by the National Park Service, which you can actually visit today as part of the Great Smoky Mountains National Park. Anyone still owning a structure was given a lifetime lease that expired in 1992. Most people left around that time. Some left a little bit later because they of lights, electricity, running water. Things like that weren't really in Elkmont because they were built before that, and upgrades were hard to get in that area. Now, of course, as people left, they just left the buildings. They left everything about them. They just walked away. So nature reclaimed the land. Cottages now sit rotting in the forest, creating kind of an eerie atmosphere, and also kind of a paranormal playground. I mean, they are preserving some of the cottages. You can actually still go up there to Elkmont today. You can see it. You can walk up to it. You can see some of the ones that are rotting. You can see some of the ones that they have fixed up and are still in the process of repairing. The clubhouses, though, are gone. One burned to the ground in a suspicious fire. And it's just a really weird area. The town is, though, said to be haunted by a couple different things. And it is a weird feeling up there. Maimed lumberjacks still roam the area. Victims of a horrifying train wreck in the area. You can get a chilled or unpleasant feeling when touring the grounds. It's really strange. It's a really strange area. It's like they just left. And not all of them left. If you get the chance to go to the Great Smoky Mountains, I definitely recommend checking out Elkmont. If you don't know anything about it, you can listen to it on the podcast episode I did, I want to say, like last year. About this time last year, maybe. Yeah, because this podcast just turned about a year old. So, happy 1 year to me. I just realized that. All right. I'm going to close this by telling you one of my weirdest, creepiest haunted encounters in Tennessee. I grew up near Nashville, so the Stones River Battlefield in Murfreesboro was not far from me. And that is a place where we went to. I think I went to that place like 4 times as a kid, just on field trips alone. And, of course, it's got a national cemetery across the street from it. And that whole area was the battlefield. They would take you and they would show you the part where I cannot remember what it's called, but the part where the rocks came up and people would get stuck, and there was a lot of death in that area. The fields where they marched and blood would just run through the ground. And it's just a very weird, creepy, haunted area. Now, they've redone the battlefield. They've made it easier accessible. It's a one-way loop. It's a really nice place to go and walk to see nature. But don't be surprised if you encounter something you can't explain. On numerous occasions, I would see people walking in the field, turn around to see where they were going, and there was no one there. You would hear people running through the trees. You would look around trying to spot, and there was no one there. The single weirdest encounter I had, though, was I was walking the loop, and I could hear cannon fire. I could hear cannon fire numerous times through the trees. And so I thought, oh, they're doing a cannon shooting. They're showing, they're doing something for the weekend or something. It was a Saturday. it must be a demonstration. So I went into the ranger's office and I said, what time are you guys doing another demonstration? And the guy's like, what are you talking about? And I said, well, I've been hearing numerous cannon fire. I thought you guys were just, doing demonstrations, showing how they worked and setting things off. And he goes, we don't do that here. And I was like, oh. And he kind of leaned over because it was crowded, and he goes, don't worry, the rest of us hear it too. So, if you're out and you want to experience it, maybe just go to one of the battlefields. You never know what you're going to encounter. If not, check out one of those numerous places I told you about all over Tennessee. Tennessee is definitely got a history. It has definitely got a bad history. And you just really never know what you're going to encounter at any spot in Tennessee. I hope you guys have enjoyed listening to Haunted Tennessee, as I covered majority of Tennessee. Any place near you, probably just go and check out. Let me know if you do have any experiences. I would love to hear you guys' experiences about Haunted Tennessee, or any place that you've been that I talked about, or how you felt about it. Happy spooky season, guys. Happy Halloween. I hope everybody is enjoying the fall weather as it starts to get colder. It is definitely chilly season, and I am here for it. I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. I hope you guys have a great month, and I'll see you in November. Stay country, y'all.